To the digital world, Lorraine was the epitome of success. A lifestyle guru with a legion of followers. Her radiant smile flickered across countless screens, a beacon of aspiration in a curated world of online celebrity. Yet beneath the gloss and the glamorous posts lurked a shadowy double life. Ur's carefully constructed public image belied a mastermind of illicit dealings, a stark testament to the perplexing blend of fame and felony in the digital age. This tale unfolds as a gripping reminder of the dual realities that can pulse beneath the surface of social media stardom. Background: Lorraine story did not start with the glitter or the infamy that later came to define her. Born into a middle-class family with its modest comforts and unremarkable routines, Lorraine's early life was as normal as one could imagine. She was the middle child, sandwiched between an overachieving elder sister and a baby brother who commanded the household's attention with his ceaseless antics. Lorraine, with her quiet demeanor and introspective gaze, often felt like the family's afterthought, which perhaps sowed the earliest seeds of her craving for recognition. Her father, a local high school history teacher, was the one anchor that seemed to understand her unspoken yearnings. He would often take Lorraine on long walks, sharing stories of the great historical figures who had shaped the world. Through his narratives, he taught her that the world was vast and full of possibilities, and that she, too, could leave an indelible mark upon it. Lorraine hung on to every word, idolizing the man who made her feel seen. Tragedy struck when Lorraine was 12. Her father was involved in a fatal car accident that abruptly snatched away the family's pillar. The loss was cataclysmic. For Lorraine, it was as if the history he had so lovingly narrated had cruelly claimed him from her. The walks became solitary, the stories turned into echoes, and the girl who dreamt of significance was left to grapple with an overwhelming invisibility. The years that followed were painted in the hues of grief and adolescence, a volatile combination. Her mother, drowning in her own sorrows, was emotionally unavailable, and the siblings were caught in their own whirlwinds. Lorraine's sanctuary became her father's study, a room left untouched where his books and memories resided. Here she found solace, but also a growing resentment. Why did the world move on when hers had stopped? As Lorraine transitioned into her teenage years, the digital realm began its meteoric rise. Social media platforms emerged as the new town squares where people gathered, showcased their lives, and most importantly, where they watched and were watched. Lorraine watched too, with a mixture of contempt and yearning. She saw individuals gaining adulation for simply existing within the glow of their screens, and something within her clicked. Here was an avenue for recognition, a place where she could matter, where her father's teachings could find a new audience. Slowly, she dipped her toes into the virtual world. Her first posts were clumsy, a clear imitation of the trends that flitted across her feed. Yet there was something in her, the depth of her loss, the intellect from her father, or perhaps a dormant charisma that resonated with people. Her follower count ticked upwards, and with each new like, comment, and share, Lorraine felt a semblance of the validation she had lost with her father's passing. By the time Lorraine reached her early 20s, she had become a full-fledged social media influencer. Her feed was a pastiche of motivational quotes, beauty tips, and lifestyle hacks. She had crafted a persona that was part life coach, part confidant. She was no longer just Lorraine She was Lorraine Live, a brand, a digital promise of daily inspiration. Yet, the more she immersed herself in her online persona, the more the boundaries blurred between her authentic self and the avatar she presented to the world. The rise of an influencer. In the world of social media, where ephemeral trends and fleeting fame are the norms, Lorraine ascent was both remarkable and seemingly sustainable. She didn't rise to fame overnight. It was the result of relentless strategizing, an innate understanding of her audience, and an unwavering commitment to the persona of Lorraine Live. With her daily posts that ranged from life-affirming quotes set against the backdrop of pastel sunsets to perfectly curated images of her bohemian chic lifestyle, she tapped into the zeitgeist of an era increasingly defined by the glossy veneer of Instagram grids and the apparent authenticity of stories and live streams. Lorraine had a knack for crafting posts that struck a delicate balance between aspirational and relatable. Her lifestyle, which she shared in vivid detail, was a carefully constructed tableau of indie coffee shop visits, yoga retreats, and eco-friendly fashion, each post a thread in the tapestry of an enviable life. Her home, always visible in soft focus backgrounds, was a testament to her taste. Minimalist, accented with verdant plants, and always basking in the kind of natural light that photographers dream of. She was not simply selling a lifestyle, she was the personification of it. Her followers did not just observe her life, they felt a part of it. They saw her morning routines, her diet choices, her struggles with the mundane, and they listened intently to her musings about life, love, and the pursuit of happiness. The comment sections of her posts were a microcosm of society. There were those who idolized her, some who envied her, and a few who sought to emulate her every move. Lorraine wielded influence with the ease of a conductor with her orchestra, and her followers danced to the rhythm she set. As her influence grew, so did the opportunities. Sponsorships and brand collaborations became a mainstay of her income. Lorraine Live was not just a person, it was a brand, a trusted voice that could sway the market. Her endorsement was the Midas touch that companies sought, and she dispensed it with strategic acumen, aware of the power she held. Yet beneath the sheen of her social media presence, there were undercurrents of a deeper struggle. For Lorraine, the metrics of likes, shares, and follower counts became both affirmation and addiction. She pursued the high of public adoration with the desperation of someone who had known profound loss. The public Lorraine, the one who spoke of mindfulness and contentment, was in a silent war with the private Lorraine, who was driven by an insatiable need for recognition and a fear of returning to that place of insignificance that haunted her since her father's death. The seductive power of her social media fame was a veil that masked these internal battles. To her audience, Lorraine appeared to have not just constructed the perfect life, but seemed to genuinely live it. They did not see the late nights spent obsessing over analytics, the anxiety that came with fluctuating engagement rates, or the dread of being overshadowed by newer, fresher faces. The pressure to maintain her platform and expand it further drove her to always be on, to always perform, and it was exhausting. The darker side of her ambition began to manifest in subtle ways. The collaborations became more frequent, the sponsored content more aggressive. Integrity seemed to take a backseat as profit took the wheel. Lorraine began to justify dubious partnerships with the rationale that her platform needed to grow at any cost. This shift did not go unnoticed. A portion of her audience began to voice their disquiet, sensing that the authenticity they cherished was eroding. But Lorraine was too far gone in the game of influence and numbers. The dissenting voices were drowned out by the clamor of a still adoring majority. Descent into criminality. Lorraine Ur's trajectory into the shadows of criminality can be traced back to a pivotal encounter, one that marked a stark departure from the curated collage of her online life. It was during a sponsored trip to China, a journey that she had meticulously documented for her ravenous followers, that she crossed paths with Andrew Luis Santos Almeida. Andrew, a charming and seemingly affluent entrepreneur, presented himself as someone who dealt in rare and exotic goods. Their meeting was incidental, a shared glance at an upscale Beijing marketplace, but it quickly spiraled into a whirlwind connection, documented in cryptic captions and suggestive images that left her audience both intrigued and baffled. In the ensuing weeks, the relationship deepened. Andrew introduced her to a lifestyle that, while it mirrored the opulence she portrayed online, was underpinned by a reality much grimmer than her followers could have imagined. It began with simple favors, carrying a package here, delivering a message there. These errands seemed innocuous at first, minor deviations from legality justified as a means to an end for someone who had grown accustomed to the allure of wealth and the fear of losing her hard-earned platform. Assault entered the picture as a shadow at first. Moments of violence witnessed during her travels with Andrew. Confrontations she was told were necessary evils in the world of high-stakes trade. Lorraine's descent was not immediate. It was a slow succumbing to the pressures and justifications of a lifestyle that she had once observed from a distance and now found herself ensnared in. Petty theft followed, a step that blurred the lines further. It was sold to her as a victimless crime, lifting trinkets from luxury stores where the cost would hardly be missed, a far cry from the grand larceny it truly was. With every step, Lorraine's image as the vibrant influencer became increasingly dichotomous with the burgeoning criminal lurking beneath the surface. Her content still espoused positivity and light, but those who looked closely might notice the subtle shift in her eyes, the occasional furrow in her brow, the faintest signs that the edifice of her digital avatar was fracturing. Drug trafficking was the point of no return. It started small, with Andrew convincing her to smuggle a modest amount of contraband in her luggage, just another package among many. But the stakes were high, and the substances were dangerous. Lorraine, whose brand had been built on wellness and health, rationalized her actions with the lie that she was not directly hurting anyone. She told herself that she was merely a courier, that the real culpability lay with those who would ultimately distribute and use the drugs. But as the quantities grew, so did the risk and the guilt that gnawed at her conscience. The seduction of criminality lay not just in the financial gain, but in the adrenaline it provided, a stark contrast to the predictable adulation of her online world. Each successful transaction was a high, every narrow escape, a rush that left her simultaneously relieved and craving more. Yet, with each step deeper into this clandestine existence, the potential consequences escalated, casting a dark pall over her once radiant presence. Lorraine's lifestyle began to reflect her inner turmoil. She spent lavishly, not just for the image it projected, but also to quell the anxiety that came with her double life. Money was laundered. Through a maze of shell companies and false sponsorships, her financial web as complex as the emotional one she was weaving. The dichotomy of existence. In the glaring light of day, Lorraine Ure was the epitome of a social media idol. Her morning posts were punctual as a sunrise, yoga sequences filmed in pastel-drenched rooms, breakfast bowls arrayed with kaleidoscopic precision, her face a canvas of serene beauty. As the sun arced across the sky, her feed flourished with vibrant endorsements, live sessions brimming with laughter, and heartfelt advice to legions of admirers. She personified the accessible dream, an alchemy of aspirational living and attainable luxury. But as dusk bled into night, the lustrous image dissolved, revealing the stark contours of a parallel existence. Under cover of darkness, Lorraine navigated the perilous labyrinth of Crackland, a moniker denoting the most notorious drug dens where society's forgotten sought solace in ephemeral highs. Here, the glittering facade of the influencer crumbled entirely, exposing a courier of misery. She was a specter in these moonlit hours, her actions choreographed in the macabre dance of drug distribution, each handoff, a betrayal of the wholesome persona she rented out by day. The double life exacted its toll in the currency of her psyche. Each night, as she weaved through the alleys of Crackland, the shimmering image of her day self became more ethereal, a portrait of someone she could scarcely relate to, a ghost of integrity haunting the fringes of her consciousness. She had mastered the art of compartmentalization, but the walls she erected between her two lives were paper-thin and soaked in the sweat of her anxiety. This dichotomy was not merely a shift in roles, it was a psychological chasm. By day, her language was one of empowerment and health. By night, it became one of transactions and survival. Lorraine's existence was a theater of the absurd, where the scripts of her roles were penned in starkly different ink, yet acted out on the same stage of her life. The cognitive dissonance this bred within her was suffocating. She would recite mantras of wellness to her followers, then later whisper codes and counts to shadowy figures in the underworld. The duplicity was corrosive, with lies tarnishing her tongue, regardless of the truth she aimed to speak. In quieter moments, the dissonance clawed at her, ravaging her sense of self. She was two people, yet neither one whole. The rift within widened with each post that garnered thousands of likes for its apparent authenticity, each deal in the dark that brought in cash but cost her pieces of her soul. The emotional toll was relentless. Guilt was her constant companion, whispering accusations that swirled with the dust in her luxurious apartment. She combated this with a narrative of necessity. It was all, she lied to herself, a means to maintain her public persona, to sustain the influence that had become her identity. But the narrative was as flimsy as the counterfeit smiles she wore. The sting and the scandal. It was an unseasonably warm night when the net closed in on Lorraine and her boyfriend, Andrew Luis Santos Almeida. The operation, codenamed Digital Facade, was the culmination of months of surveillance. Law enforcement had been tipped off by an anonymous source, a whisper in the digital wind that had set off alarm bells and instigated a deep dive into the influencer's private life. With each layer peeled back, the contrast grew starker, and the persona that Lorraine had curated online began to crumble. The sting was executed with clinical precision. Undercover officers who had infiltrated Cracklin's intricate web had tracked the transactions, mapped the network, and finally pinpointed the couple as central figures in the nocturnal tapestry of drug distribution. As Lorraine and Andrew exchanged contraband for currency in a dimly lit alley, the trap was sprung. The sudden flood of lights, the shouted commands, and the rush of boots on asphalt shattered the night. With the swiftness of a shutter snap, the couple's fate was sealed. Their arrest, the final exposure of a reality hidden behind a carefully edited gallery of lies. The repercussions reverberated far beyond the confines of the physical arrest. As news broke, the digital realm that Lorraine had reigned over convulsed. Her community of followers, a mosaic of devoted fans and casual observers, were left grappling with a sense of betrayal that ran deep. For many, Lorraine was not just an influencer, but a paragon of positive living, a beacon of self-betterment. The revelation that their icon was embroiled in criminality sent shockwaves through this virtual society. Public reaction oscillated between disbelief and anger. How could a woman who advocated for wellness and mindfulness by day peddle poison by night? Social media platforms, once forums for her praise, turned into amphitheaters of condemnation. Lorraine's meticulously constructed image was dissected with ruthless scrutiny. Each post and video re-examined for signs of the duplicity that now seemed so evident. The media frenzy that ensued was voracious. News outlets, hungry for the sordid details that such a scandal naturally promised, dug relentlessly. Headlines screamed of the downfall of a digital deity. Features rolled out with psychological analyses of her double life, and TV segments ran interviews with bewildered fans who felt duped. Overnight, Lorraine's name became synonymous with deception, her influence serving as a cautionary tale of the duality that can exist behind the screens of social media. Opinion pieces flooded digital publications, speculating on the impact of this revelation on the influencer culture at large. Lorraine's scandal served as a mirror, reflecting the potential shadows that lurk behind the sunny dispositions portrayed online. It raised uneasy questions about authenticity and the trust we place in those who hold sway in the virtual realm. Societal reflection. The arrest of Lorraine and her boyfriend Andrew Luis Santos Almeida shone a spotlight not just on the individuals involved, but on a wider societal issue that perplexed law enforcement officials and intrigued the creators of media series in Brazil. The participation of middle and upper-class individuals in drug trafficking activities had long been a quiet concern, but cases like Lorraine's brought it to the forefront of public discourse. It wasn't just the favelas or underprivileged neighborhoods that bred criminal activity. It crept silently through the manicured lawns and high walls of affluent societies. Media series in Brazil began to reflect this dark underbelly of society, often featuring characters that, much like Lorraine, led double lives. These series did not just aim to entertain, but also to expose the troubling trends within Brazilian society, where the quest for adrenaline, power, or simply a twisted notion of rebellion drove the youth from seemingly stable backgrounds towards a path of crime. The intrigue surrounding such individuals was magnified by their often public personas, which were in stark contrast to their criminal undertakings. Psychologists and criminologists were brought to the fore to dissect this phenomenon, providing insights into the labyrinthine minds of these adolescents. Experts weighed in on the numerous factors that could contribute to this paradoxical behavior. One school of thought suggested that the very shield of privilege could breed a sense of invincibility and boredom, leading to thrill-seeking behavior. The strictures of a controlled, affluent upbringing might push some towards illicit activities, seeking an escape from the pressures of high societal expectations. Others argued that the anonymity provided by the digital age facilitated a dissociation from one's actions and their consequences. The online realm offered a playground where one's alter ego could act out without the immediate risk of exposure. For some, the lure of the dark web and the encrypted conversations that it facilitated could be a siren call, offering an adrenaline rush that the glossy surface of their daily lives lacked. There was also the aspect of social and emotional alienation experienced by many adolescents, regardless of their socioeconomic status. In a world where connections were increasingly digital and superficial, the desire for deeper, albeit deviant experiences could manifest in antisocial behavior. The psychology of group dynamics played a part as well, with peer influence being a potent catalyst for actions that, in isolation, might never have been considered. Criminal psychologists noted that the juxtaposition of an online personality with a criminal one might also be rooted in a form of identity crisis, a common struggle among the youth. In their formative years, when the self is still being defined, the contrast between the curated self-image and the authentic self might become so stark that the individual begins to live out these two roles in reality. Moreover, the allure of easy money and the misconception that drug trafficking was a quick path to riches was an undeniable draw for some. This, coupled with a misguided romanticism of the criminal world fostered by pop culture and media representations, added to the appeal. As this conversation grew, it also sparked a larger societal self-examination. Questions were raised about the values being imparted to the younger generations and the role models they were exposed to. The case of Lorraine was not an anomaly. It was symptomatic of a deeper malaise within society where the line between right and wrong was increasingly blurred. Legal proceedings and controversy. The story of Lorraine took a dramatic turn when her world of dual existences collided with the uncompromising reality of law. The day of Lorraine's arrest was filled with confusion and contradiction, setting the stage for a legal saga that would captivate and divide public opinion. The early morning raid that led to the capture of Lorraine and Andrew was a coordinated strike by law enforcement, yet reports quickly surfaced of possible police misconduct. Cell phone footage emerged, casting doubt on the legality of the search and arrest, with claims of excessive force and invasion of privacy taking the fore. The murky details of the raid became fodder for both the media and the courtrooms, as the debate over the means of justice overshadowed the ends. As Lorraine's trial commenced, the differing narratives between her claims and those of the authorities became central to the judicial discourse. She claimed to be a victim of circumstance, an influencer who had unwittingly become ensnared in the web of drug trafficking due to her relationship with Andrew. Conversely, the authorities portrayed her as a key figure in the operation, citing evidence gathered from months of surveillance and intelligence work. The courtroom became an arena where the truth was as much on trial as Lorraine herself. The judicial process was an intricate dance of legal maneuverings. The prosecution was steadfast, laying out a tapestry of evidence, from digital footprints to testimony from undercover operatives. They aimed to paint a comprehensive picture of Lorraine's guilt, portraying her as a mastermind who used her social media prowess to mask her illicit activities. Her defense team, however, argued that the evidence was circumstantial at best, and at worst, the product of a flawed and illegal investigation. They presented Lorraine as a misguided soul, caught up in the allure of love and the naivete of youth, rather than the calculated criminal depicted by the prosecution. The court battles were long and arduous. Every piece of evidence was scrutinized, every witness cross-examined with a fine-tooth comb. Lorraine's digital life was dissected, her online interactions analyzed for hints of criminal intent. The defense contested the characterizations of her online persona, insisting that the lifestyle she portrayed on social media was a common trope in the influencer industry, not a smokescreen for criminal activity. The controversy extended beyond the courtroom as debates raged over the rights of digital citizens and the boundaries of law enforcement. Advocacy groups weighed in on the privacy violations, while law and order proponents stressed the necessity of aggressive tactics in combating sophisticated criminal networks. It became a landmark case, not only for its sensational backstory, but also for the legal precedents it would set regarding digital privacy and police procedures. As the trial drew to a close, the jury was left to sift through the tangled narratives presented by both sides. The defense's final argument hinged on the unreliability of digital evidence and the supposed violations that marred the investigation. They sought to undermine the prosecution's case by casting doubt on the integrity of the evidence collection process. The prosecution, however, remained resolute, their case founded on the belief that Lorraine's online and offline activities were irrevocably intertwined with the criminal enterprise.